So this is a continuation of the death signal frequency, which is now at 0. And here, of course, we've got the noosphere message, where above Donald Trump, we've got the Psi super soldiers, and of course, this being, and everyone and their dogs been wondering who this being is, and of course, let's explain. So as you can see, it doesn't have to be a demon. In fact, we've got Sauron as the figure above Trump. There, of course, you see the three-horned helmets. Now we know who the figure is above Trump. Sauron, not a demon, but the Lord of the Rings. And you'll see on Trump's finger the glowing ring, which is getting the death signal transmitted into Trump from Sauron. So you see the light shining from Donald Trump's left hand, and if you look at the picture, you'll see a ring on the left hand. And instead of healing, we've got the Hunter Biden, who's on his deathbed, with the two hands of Lucifer ready to pull Hunter Biden into hell in the picture. So this is one gigantic noospheric ritual using the death signal to terminate the Democrat filth and bring about the healing of America from the power of the Lord of the Rings. So with the death signal of the entire human race brought down to 0, we explained in this video, stuff that humans don't know about. What is the purpose of reducing the frequency of death for humans to produce no signal? Well, it simply is the death force is used to make all rituals 100%. But since Satanists, of course, go straight to hell, but Christians go round and round and round the reincarnation cycle until they're drained dry in their Abaddon cages through numerous lifetimes. And research has shown that you reincarnate after death between 6 months to 3 years after your death. So all of your dead relations are back in bodies. I traced mine. All of them are back in the bodies at a lower frequency until, of course, I did the lowering the death force signal to 0. So the death force signal being 0 means that all of the death force vampiric rituals are 100%. So with the death signal being at 0, that means that everything you do is 100%. So if you've got a death force vampire, everything you do becomes real. Now, if we're targeting, of course, the billionaires, and these, of course, will be first on the list, the Russian billionaires, because remember, our aim is to slaughter all the billionaires and trillionaires on the planet, the ones least protected by the shadow universe where Taylor doesn't marry the Pfizer butt slut and gets dumped on my lap, are the Russian billionaires. So all of you vampires should now be targeting Russian billionaires 24/7. And of course, top of the heap is Vladimir Putin, who has a death signal of 0. So if you're a death force vampire, you're simply enabled to control the entire life path of all the Russian billionaires from cause of death to conception if you have a death force vampire service. Similarly, Iran, we can use this death force vampire technology because all of the Iranians have a death signal of 0, therefore have no control over reality. And in fact, by having a death signal of 0, they have been sequestered into the control of the death force vampires. Why? Because the probability of events in physics is equal to minus the log of energy times time. So if you put the energy of the death signal down to 0, then the probability of that event becomes 100%. So once you've lowered the signal of the deaths of a race to 0, the God Emperor, who controls this methodology, has all of his probabilities raised to 100%. And in this case, what we've done is to make sure that the fate of Iran with the Russian oligarchs is total ganking. And the next step is to use this technology to make sure that, so with this one can make sure that all the Iranian population whose death signal is 0 and are locked into the 100% manifestation of whoever made their death signal 0 are observing the nuclear immolation of Iran. So the only future for Iran now, thanks to the death signal being 0 and the God Emperor being the super being that lowered the death signal of the Iranians to 0, is that Iran is going to be torched by nuclear weapons and turned into all right.
I think that's everything.
Why don't you do it? No thumbs up.
No, it's Nice grown-up stuff.
So that's the only future for Iran turned into a nuclear wasteland thanks to the death frequency being lowered to 0 and giving the God Emperor the total power to make everything 100% real that he intends. And since of course the Iranian race are going to die, we can export all of the lovely death force from the death of Iran to the Russian oligarchs and Putin to make sure that there is no Russian billionaire left alive by use of this death force vampiric technology. So if you're a Russian oligarch, say goodbye to anything but your Abaddon cage, because your life expectancy will be that of a mayfly. All done because we've lowered the death signal to 0, and everything the God Emperor wants to happen happens simply because he's got no resistance from the human race. Instead, the entire human race are supplying the death force 0 frequency to make everything he wants to manifest absolutely 100% real. One wondered why the great Donald Trump, the savior of America, had this noospheric psychic warfare installation dumped into the group mind of humanity. Well, it's simply that Iran will be toast, turned into a nuclear wasteland, and all of the death force from the Iranian filth, the lowest form of scum, the satanized Islamic race that need to be excised from Islam to make it great, are death forced, and the death force signal they release is 0, but when they're nuked, we get lots of anti-Higgs fields, so their light goes back into the 5-dimensional Riemann manifold, back to the source. And because these Satanist vermin, the Iranians, are nuked, the Americans link up to the new source and the new source IOU, so the Americans, by terminating the filth of the Iranian race after the devastating nuclear attack on America that's thwarted by the Sidled, can feed off the light released by the Iranians getting nuked, and this light can then be transmitted from the God Emperor, who's the Sauron figure, with the super soldiers above into the great Donald Trump president, who's channeling the news source light, the IOU, that comes from the release of the light by the Iranians nuked, and of course all of the Russian oligarchs and Putin ganked by this process, into America to save Americans with the light of the IOU from the source, the news source, to heal America and make sure that America is great again. All in the picture. All explained to you, wanking fucktards, and you now know why the death signal is 100% manifestation of the Psi Lord's will and making America great again.